And there we are. How do you like that? Shift right into gear as though we knew what we were doing, which we don't really. At least I don't. You do.
I always don't know what I'm doing.
Well, it's good to see you again, Marcia Montenegro. We had a busy, active evening last night on the question of the Enneagram. When our friend Carl Teicher had posted the copy of his book, which I had sent him, and so many people joined in. Some thought it was in favor of it. Others thought it was occultic because they thought the cover creeped them out. But it was an engaging discussion, I thought.
Yes, it was.
And so today we are talking about Christopher Heuertz. How do you say it? How do you say it?
I say Heuertz, but I'm not
Heuertz?
sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It could possibly be Heuertz, but
Heuertz. I think that is correct. At least,
I think Heuertz is probably right. Yeah.
that's what I've been saying, but I'm always concerned because, as you know, I never speak proper English.
Let's not get into that.
Okay,
we're going to spend too much time on it. Let's just go to the topic.
We're not going to spend any time on it because we're going to talk about Christopher Heuertz, Beth McCord, Richard Rohr, New Age, and there's others involved in this whole thing.
Right.
So why would we want to talk about them in association with New Age? Why is that important? And we address it in the book at some length. Why is that important?
Yes. Well, for Chris Heuertz, he names 4 people as his teachers for the Enneagram. Richard Rohr is one of them, of course, because Richard Rohr mentored Chris Heuertz. And then he mentions 3 others who are New Agers, including Helen Palmer and Russ Hudson. Russ Hudson's name has been showing up a lot. Now, Russ Hudson co-authored with Don Riso a book called The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And in fact, I was just pointing out to you, Don, as we came on, or right before we came on, that on Amazon, if you put in a search for a book with the word Enneagram in it, the first book that always comes up, no matter what I put in, is The Wisdom of the Enneagram.
I have seen that also.
Yeah, by Don Riso and Russ Hudson. I saw a lot of Christians promoting this book when people would say, hey, what's this Enneagram thing? I've heard people talk about it. And somebody would put in a comment underneath on Facebook, oh, you should get this book on the Enneagram. You know, this is like one of the best books, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And I mean, these were Christians saying this, and I am just sitting there screaming silently, or maybe not silently, because this is a New Age book. And I've also seen Christians recommend the Enneagram Institute or quote the Enneagram Institute, which was founded by Don Riso and Russ Hudson. And of course, it's a New Age organization to promote the Enneagram. It has no credibility outside of the New Age. But just putting the word institute on there, I guess, gives it sort of an appearance of credibility. But Russ Hudson is very New Age. I mean, if you just research him a little bit online, you'll see that. And so he was one of Chris Heuertz's teachers. Now, I don't think he was a teacher McCord, but she had other teachers.
Let's take just a short pause here.
Okay.
Because you and I know what we're talking about when we say New Age. Many who are watching will know what we're talking about when we say New Age. But for those who are wondering, okay, is that just a catchword for anyone you disagree with? What is the New Age?
Yeah, that's a good point, because people might be thinking, well, she's just saying that because the person, you know, has views she doesn't like or something like that. Right. So when I say somebody's a New Ager, what I mean is they are holding to basic, essential New Age beliefs. The New Age is very vast and it's not consistent. So you can have a number of New Agers who don't agree on things. They will have different views about certain things. However, there are certain central things about the New Age, such as belief in a sort of it's the New Age God, who is sort of a presence or an energy or a force, or sometimes talked about in personal terms, but not anything like the God of the Bible. And this energy or force, God force, presence, divine reality, etc., is a New Age God. There's a belief in energy, that we're all actually energy, that we're part of the energy in the world. We're all connected through this energy. There's denial of absolute truth, or absolute good and evil. So this is another common thing among New Agers. There's a belief that we are innately divine and have a divine nature. And there's a belief that we are spiritually progressing. We are all on a spiritual evolutionary path. Most New Agers believe in reincarnation. There are some who don't. They have other views that are kind of spin-offs of reincarnation, but a lot of New Agers do believe in it. But whether they do or not, they believe in this progressive evolutionary spiritual path, and that we're moving towards a state of what they call higher consciousness, and that actually the whole world is moving towards this. And the more people who do this, the more the world will move in that direction.
Okay, good. So that is in just a short discussion of what it is.
Yes.
It's bigger and more complicated, but that would give you the essentials. And also it starts explaining why Richard Rohr and the Enneagram teachers are comfortable in teaching what they're teaching, because it sort of syncretizes with the New Age.
Yes.
Right? So it's not troubling to them.
Right, okay. Exactly. Yes. So the Enneagram, of course, also in the New Age, you're very oriented towards yourself, because everything is about your journey. So, your journey, primarily your spiritual journey. So everything relates to that. So even studying your so-called personality, profile or traits about you would be related to your spiritual path. Everything's always spiritually based in the New Age. I mean, everything, even their healing methods. So the view of the Enneagram is that you learn about these things about yourself that are holding you back from realizing your true nature or your true self. And so in the New Age, the Enneagram is very popular, and was very popular because of that, because it will uncover your true nature. And since the New Age is very, very, very self-absorbed, the Enneagram has high appeal for people in the New Age. That's putting it mildly. And it's the same as astrology, because astrology, getting your birth chart read by an astrologer is going to be all about you and your path, the background influences, your goals, etc. So everything's always about you. And the Enneagram has the same appeal. So it's, to me, though, what is astounding is that the book that Heuertz first wrote, The Sacred Enneagram, published by Zondervan, and on his webpage for the book, that's where I found him thanking the Richard Rohr and these three New Agers. And I found it really interesting that either Zondervan doesn't care that New Agers taught the person who wrote their book, or they don't know they're New Agers. I'm not sure which it is. And they apparently don't know about Richard Rohr either, or they don't care. So this is what I kept running into with these Enneagram writers and teachers. The other one you mentioned, Beth McCord, she actually named 6 New Agers for herself. And I've done a post on that, Beth McCord and her New Age teachers. The book, and then there's a book I haven't mentioned yet. So we've mentioned The Sacred Enneagram by Chris Heuertz and how he thanks these 3 New Agers. And
well, and I want to read before you continue on to talk about
okay.
the influence on Beth McCord and others. From Christopher's book, he tells you this. One of my teachers, Russ Hudson, so he declares he's one of his teachers, says, this isn't a type of person, but a path to God. So that's the second important thing. This is not a personality profile.
Mm-hmm.
These are 9 different paths to get to their conception of God, which is not the God of Scripture, as it turns out.
Right.
I believe it's sacred because as a map of our soul, it is a compassionate sketch of possibilities. The Enneagram is less about 9 types of people and more about 9 paths back to our true selves and 9 paths to divine love, end quote. So that's directly from his book. He tells us really 2 very important things. One of his teachers is Russ Hudson, who is absolutely positively New Age. The second thing is, it is not a personality profile. It is you finding your particular path of the 9 possible paths to God as they conceive of God.
Right. Now the reason he says it and he puts it that way is because, I mean, he's really talking like a New Ager there. Because it is technically, or the way it's used when you're first using it, it's sort of presented as a personality profile or learning about these 9 types, which are usually presented as personalities. But in actuality, because everything is spiritualized in the New Age, they're actually paths, 9 paths to God and to the real you. And that's exactly how the New Age does it. They'll take something that seems kind of mundane or prosaic, like these are 9 personality types, and then they say, but there's this deeper meaning to it. It's really this path. So that's what's going on. So yes, they are interested in themselves, but it's in this spiritual fashion because you get to learn about yourself, and then you also do something that's going to help you spiritually progress. That's very typical of the New Age.
Now, Beth McCord.
Yes.
You pointed out that she named 6
Six.
New Agers as her teachers. And her claim is that she is teaching a Christianized version of the Enneagram, right?
Yeah.
It's a biblically based version.
Yes.
And appeals to that she has been doing this for between 17 and 20 years. It depends on which of her works you read. So she's been doing it for 17 to 20 years. Where would she have learned the Enneagram to begin with?
Yes, when I first saw that figure that she said how long she'd been doing the Enneagram, and my first thought was, then she must have learned it from New Agers because, 17 to 20 years ago, the only person that wasn't technically a New Ager who knew about the Enneagram was Richard Rohr and a handful of Jesuit priests. I didn't really think Beth McCord had learned it from any Jesuit priests. And I didn't really think, I'd never seen her connected to Richard Rohr, and I still haven't. So my immediate thought was she had to have New Age teachers. And so when I looked into it, sure enough, 6 people, she named 6 people, they're all New Age. So there again, you have her and Chris Heuertz both admitting they have New Age teachers. Now, if you're learning the Enneagram from a New Ager, then you are learning, of course, the New Age concepts, and you're learning a tool that has no scientific validity, but New Agers don't care about that anyway. They could care less. They'll even defend it as being better because it doesn't have scientific validity.
Right.
I could even, if I went back to my New Age thinking, I could even do it I know exactly
Sure.
what I would say to defend it because
It has spiritual validity, so who cares if it has scientific?
exactly. I defended astrology against the
Right.
fact, I would come across people once in a while who said, but there isn't any scientific evidence for that. And you believe this and that. And how can you believe that? That's not. I had an answer for it. So I know that it doesn't bother New Agers. So that, if you're learning it from New Agers, you're getting the concepts. Now, as you pointed out, Beth McCord and her husband claim, but they don't use a spirituality that is not Christian. They have put the gospel in it, and their Enneagram is gospel centered. So basically, what they're saying is they're taking all the meaning that I guess that she learned from the New Agers, and they're just changing it into a Christian meaning, which is, they're just very artificially sort of enhancing it as a Christian tool. But on what basis are you doing that? Because it's invalid to begin with. And I pointed out, I did a post on this, and I pointed out in there that would be like me saying, okay, I'm going to take astrology and make it a Christian tool.
Right.
I will look at each of the 12 signs and I'll redefine them in Christian terms and come up with Christian meanings that relate to the Bible. There are all kinds of ways you could do that. You could do the spiritual gifts, you could do biblical characters or whatever, and you could make it into what appeared to be superficially a Christian tool. Yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
Does that make it valid? No, of course not.
No.
That just means it's made up. And that's what
Okay.
they did with the Enneagram.
Let's take another person in, because we're dealing with the ones that are being put out by what are thought of as evangelical publishers.
Right. Right.
What about Suzanne Stabile? She's got to be Orthodox, right?
Yeah, that's what one would think. She is married to a Methodist minister. The interesting thing about her and her husband is that they were both mentored by Richard Rohr. And Suzanne Stabile, it's written, she wrote it. I saw it on her website somewhere. Plus, there were some interviews, magazine interviews of her that I read. And she pointed out, or the reporter pointed out, and you were mentored by Richard Rohr for several years. Yes. So this is not just like being mentored for a short time or 1 or 2 years. This was an ongoing thing for several years. Richard Rohr now is not New Age. However, his views are very heretical. They don't line up with, even Christian essentials.
They don't even line up with the Roman Catholic Church.
They don't even line. No,
answers,
they don't. They do not even line up with the Roman Catholic Church. They're so far out. They're not even Roman Catholic views. And so this is who she was mentored by. And so her spirituality of the Enneagram is influenced by Richard Rohr. Now, how much New Age is in there, I don't know. I would tend to see her more as along the lines of Richard Rohr. Both her and her co-author, Ian Cron, who has a very close association with Richard Rohr. And in fact, Ian Cron, Suzanne Stabile, and Chris Heuertz have all taught at Richard Rohr's center. So they have Chris Heuertz may have New Age influence on his thinking, and I think we see that with his book. But he also has very strong Richard Rohr influence. And I think he aligns with Rohr in certain areas, as does Suzanne Stabile and Ian Cron.
And they have an ongoing. So it isn't just that they had taught, they are teaching. It's an ongoing relationship.
Yes, it's an ongoing relationship, definitely. And so you've got, and the publisher for the book by Suzanne Stabile and Ian Cron was IVP, The Road Back to You. That was the first book that came out 2016, the first quote unquote evangelical Christian book on the Enneagram. The year after that, Chris Heuertz's book, The Sacred Enneagram, came out, has sold over 100,000 copies by last October. So that number is up, I'm sure. He's coming out with another book, I think later this year, called The Enneagram of Belonging. And a workbook came out, I think in December, for The Sacred Enneagram, which was promoted. And the promotion of this book by Zondervan mentions Richard Rohr. as though he's a credible, as they're saying it as though this is good. This helps, helps you understand this workbook is going to be really helpful because Richard Rohr has this influence and works with Chris Heuertz, and we're supposed to think, wow, oh, that's great, and this is shocking to me because knowing what Richard Rohr believes, I know we're going to talk about him on another program. We're going to talk about some of his beliefs,
right?
But it's non-Christian. But okay, so IVP. Their latest book, which came out last year, about a year ago, is the Sacred Rhythms for the Enneagram. Now, this is what I discovered about that book that really put me kind of in shock, really. And I'm hard to shock. I'm somewhat hard to shock because I've seen so many shocking things in this ministry. But they have a gratitude section in that book, thanking people who have contributed to the Enneagram. And they thank 13 New Agers. 13 New Agers.
So
I looked
all
all these people up, and I did a Facebook post called Christian Book Thanks New Agers. So you can look it up if you want.
We are running over. We've been trying to do these between 12 and 20 minutes, and we consistently don't do that because we're really concerned about this issue.
Right.
I did a radio interview yesterday, and one of the questions they asked me, because they've had pastors say, well, this is just a passing fad. I think even the one of the mainline evangelical publications, Gospel Coalition maybe, or somebody like that, said this is just a passing fad, this will go away. And they said, how do you respond to that? I said, well, someone could say the coronavirus is just a passing fad. It's going to go away, and it will. But how much devastation is going to be is there going to be along the way?
Right.
That is the question. Anyone? That's a really great response. And so, and that leads into this. Roll Deep NASA, which we had just looked at, Roll Deep NASA asks this question: how will you counter this influence of the Enneagram with scriptures? We deal with this extensively in the book.
Yeah.
It is important. We cannot do it in a 20-minute little piece like this.
No.
Richard Rohr, The Enneagram Secret, is available by ebook at Amazon.com right now. You can order a book which will start shipping around May 13th, or you can go to our website, enneagramsecret.com, and order it and have it shipped within a day or two. You'll have it. They're very quick there. So there's a lot of good resources you can watch. We have 4 other videos like this, plus several 2-hour videos. There's a lot of information. If you email me at donvino@midwestoutreach.org, donvino@midwestoutreach.org, or go to our website and send me an email, or email Marcia Montenegro, we will get you links to help you to do this. It is important to counter it, and we have the tools for you to do that.
Can I say one quick thing?
One quick thing.
One quick thing, answer to what he asked is, Scripture tells us as Christians we are being conformed to the image of Christ. We are to grow more like Christ. So Christ is our model. We don't need to look at a tool to find out our personality traits or try to find a true divine self or true self or whatever. That's not the answer, because Scripture's already given us the answer, which is to be conformed. And that is, how is that done? That's what the Bible, the whole New Testament, is about. It's the letters to the churches on how to live as a Christian, yielding to the Holy Spirit, serving God, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, the answer is really the whole New Testament. It's really the answer. But I always bring that up right away. We're being conformed to the image of Christ.
Okay, Marcia, we are going to end this for today, and we'll pick it up again in a few days and do part number 6.
Okay.
Okay, and so there we go, and there you have it. Until next time.